Have you ever noticed that some of the kindest people you meet carry a quiet, almost invisible exhaustion? The ones who are always there, who listen for hours, who lend a hand, offer a smile, and say yes when it seems inconvenient. Yet behind that generosity lies a weight most people never see. Kindness is often thought of as simple, virtuous, and uncomplicated, something everyone admires. But in reality, it has shadows. From an early age, many learn that being agreeable, sacrificing personal needs, and prioritizing others is a way to earn love, approval, or safety. A child who consistently puts others first internalizes this as normal, and as adulthood arrives, this pattern often solidifies into identity. The person who is always reliable, always giving, becomes so intertwined with their role that the boundary between self and service blurs. Over time, this forced kindness can become a mask, a role performed to maintain harmony or avoid conflict, even when it comes at the cost of emotional, mental, or physical well-being. When generosity is driven by obligation, fear of rejection, or the need for approval, it stops being genuine and starts draining the soul. Psychologists call this compassion fatigue, a state where continuous empathy and giving leave the giver emotionally depleted, sometimes leaving them numb, irritable, or invisible to those around them. The irony is that the more consistent the kindness, the more the world comes to expect it, shaping behavior unconsciously and creating a culture where the kind person's own needs are overlooked. People stop asking what they want, assuming they will always adapt, leaving a subtle loneliness wrapped in politeness, a tension hidden beneath warmth. This is not a flaw in character. It is a reflection of societal conditioning that equates worth with giving and measures virtue by selflessness. Kindness without boundaries, without self-inclusion, is no longer a gift, it is a form of slow erosion, a subtle self-abandonment that creates resentment, hidden anger, and emotional tension that eventually seeks expression. When suppressed for too long, these feelings emerge unexpectedly, snapping at loved ones over minor frustrations, passive-aggressive responses, or the quiet sense of invisibility despite constant giving. But genuine kindness is not inherently harmful. It flows from a place of abundance, not scarcity, and when practiced with awareness, it heals both the giver and the receiver. Neuroscience shows that our brains are wired for empathy. When we witness another's suffering, our neural systems mirror that pain. However, chronic exposure to others' needs without protective boundaries can flood the nervous system with stress hormones, increasing anxiety, burnout, and even physical strain. It's not that kindness is dangerous, it's that unbound kindness, born of fear or conditioning rather than choice, can be destructive. The remedy is deceptively simple, yet profound. Begin with yourself. True kindness requires self-inclusion. If your giving does not honor your own well-being, it is not kindness, it is performance, a mask that eventually collapses. Boundaries are essential. Saying no, prioritizing energy, honoring emotions, and asserting limits are not acts of selfishness. They are declarations of honesty. A boundary says, this is what I can offer, and this is what I cannot, preserving the authenticity of care. Psychologists describe boundaries as invisible lines marking where one person ends and another begins. And when established, relationships shift from dependency and obligation to mutual respect and clarity. Healthy boundaries do not diminish kindness, they amplify it. When generosity stems from a place of alignment with one's needs and values, it becomes magnetic, sustainable, and profoundly effective. The mask falls away, revealing a kindness that is deliberate, conscious, and rooted in self-respect. It is a kindness that says yes without depleting, that offers without resentment, that is radiant rather than draining. The paradox is that by protecting ourselves, we increase our capacity to care for others. The dark side of kindness is not inherent in generosity itself, but in the neglect of self. The remedy lies in awareness and action, acknowledging these feelings, setting boundaries, and treating oneself with the same compassion extended to others. Once this is achieved, kindness becomes a reflection of wholeness, not self-abandonment. It is a choice rather than a compulsion, a conscious expression of empathy rather than a survival mechanism. Neuroscience reinforces this. The mirror neuron system allows us to experience others' emotions, but it does not discriminate between balanced empathy and harmful overexposure. When boundaries are absent, the nervous system experiences chronic stress. When boundaries exist, empathy thrives without depletion. Culturally, we often celebrate relentless giving, equating it with virtue. Yet hidden within this praise is a dangerous assumption that goodness requires self-erasure. The phrases, "she's such a good girl," or "he's always so nice," subtly reinforce the idea that worth comes from compliance, silence, and sacrifice. True kindness does not erase the self, it encompasses it. It honors limits, acknowledges fatigue, and includes emotional truth. The kindest people, paradoxically, often need this self-inclusion most, because it preserves the very generosity they wish to offer. Practically, cultivating authentic kindness requires strategies. First, pause before responding to requests. Reflect on energy, desire, and alignment with values. Even a brief moment of consideration can prevent automatic people-pleasing. Second, embrace the power of a compassionate no. Declining a request does not harm the relationship. It preserves integrity. Third, reframe self-worth. Value is inherent, not earned through perpetual giving. Rest, boundaries, and self-care are not indulgent. They are essential. Fourth, nourish the self through creative pursuits, meaningful connections, and quiet reflection. Abundant kindness flows naturally from a fulfilled and rested self. Fifth, acknowledge difficult emotions, anger, sadness, frustration not as enemies of kindness, but as indicators that boundaries are needed. Suppressed, these feelings ferment into the monster within. Acknowledge, they become guides toward balance. Masks of forced kindness can weigh heavily, obscuring identity and blurring self-awareness. Removing the mask allows kindness to emerge from authenticity, where yes and no coexist without guilt, and care flows freely without depletion. The ancient principle of the oxygen mask applies perfectly here. To care effectively for others, one must care for oneself first. Treating yourself with true compassion amplifies, rather than diminishes, your capacity to extend genuine empathy outward. When kindness originates from a grounded, balanced, and self-inclusive place, it transforms into a luminous force that heals, inspires, and sustains both giver and receiver. The dark side of kindness is ultimately not in generosity but in neglecting oneself. By confronting this, setting boundaries, honoring emotions, and living with self-awareness, kindness shifts from a mask into a mirror, from a compulsion into choice, from exhaustion into life-affirming love. The world does not need more silent martyrdom. It needs courageous, authentic kindness that includes the self. Every act of compassion begins within, and once that foundation is established, generosity becomes radiant, enduring, and transformative, enriching the lives of others while sustaining the giver, proving that the truest kindness is the one that preserves both the heart giving and the heart receiving, creating a cycle of care that is profound, intentional, and infinitely sustainable.